How to construct an ideal voting system. We will talk about major problems with existing voting systems in other videos and posts. Anyone familiar with computer programming will tell you that no proprietary vote tabulation or counting machine should be trusted because you cannot audit the code for exploits. Even hand tallies and voting booths are not completely foolproof because you need poll watchers at every location to keep people honest. The little-known independent candidates do not have the resources to make sure they are treated fairly at each polling location. Our goal is to level the playing field and improve the accuracy and the convenience of the count. More sophisticated ordered choice algorithms realistically require a computer count as well. So, let's see if we can marry these two goals. We will start with a thought experiment of a perfectly secure election if everyone is paying attention. We put everyone voting in a room. Let's say hypothetically it is possible regardless of how many people there are in the district. Then we call out every name on the voter rolls. As a name is called, the person stands up, identifies his or herself, and states the vote choice. A person at a large whiteboard can tally the person's vote in front of everyone. As you can see here, Alice votes for candidate A, Bob votes for candidate C, Charles does not vote, Dan votes for candidate A, and Eric votes for candidate B. Candidate A gets 2 votes, and candidates B and C both get only 1 vote. Everyone in the room can do the tally from the whiteboard. If the person calling out the official tally does not add it up correctly, people will call them out on it. If a person's vote is marked down incorrectly, then that person will say something in front of everyone and it will be corrected. If an outsider gets mistakenly put on the board, then people in the room will identify the illegal voter on the board as not on the rolls. Everyone is watching, so everything should be done correctly, and even if some people were not watching, there would be little incentive to cheat because the cheater would not know who was not watching and would presumably not want to be caught. This is about as perfect a system as you can get because it is based on total transparency. But the problem is with that transparency comes complete loss of ballot privacy. Now if that is what it actually takes to get an accurate count, I am fine with it. Accuracy is more important than anything else. But privacy is something we also greatly desire in a system. Let's examine a more privacy-friendly system. This time we will have 2 separate tallies on the whiteboard. One will have all the names like before. We will record the results of the votes on another column of the whiteboard. As each person comes into the room, they will register. If their name is on the voter roll, they will get an envelope with their name on it and be given the option to randomly draw a ballot from a pile. In this case, Alice gets her ballot. Each ballot has a unique random number on it as well as the tear-off receipt with that same number. Alice here draws a ballot with the unique number FA43D. The person takes the ballot and votes and tears off the receipt. Here once again Alice votes for candidate A. The ballot is then folded and taped over so the vote is not visible. It is then placed in the envelope with the person's name on it and handed into a person collecting ballots. One person will open the envelopes and separate the envelopes from the ballots. The envelopes are put in one basket and the ballots are put in a separate basket. When everyone has finished voting, someone takes the envelopes with names on it and places a check next to each envelope cast. So here we have checks beside the names of Alice, Bob, Dan, and Eric, and there is no check besides Charles because once again he is absent. On the other board someone writes the numbers on the ballots and the votes. Here you will once again have 2 votes for candidate A, 1 vote for candidate B, and 1 vote for candidate C as before. However, this time you have no idea who voted for who. There are 4 votes in both the left and right columns as you would expect. They should always match. Now let's discuss what could go wrong. Let's say a bad actor tried to flip one counterfeit ballot with the same number in the back. In this case the vote was flipped from candidate A to candidate C as you can see in red. The person who voted with that number, Alice, could look on the right board and that next to her number, FA43D, is candidate C instead of candidate A who she voted for. Alice would then complain and come up with her receipt to prove that was her number and affirm that is not who she wanted to vote for. The problem is solved. If the person in the back threw in a counterfeit ballot with a different number, for example 74A21 with a fake vote for candidate C in red, then you would get 5 votes on the right side instead of 4. The totals would not match. People would know there was foul play. If the vote difference was meaningful, everyone would have to vote again with everyone being scrutinized in the back more closely. Let's say another corrupt elections official then decided to put his counterfeit ballot for candidate C in a counterfeit envelope with a voter named Fran. Now there would be 5 votes in each column, but anyone paying attention could call attention to the fact Fran does not live there and is not on the voting rolls. The fraud is caught once more. Another corrupt official could put in a fake vote for Charles, in this case for candidate C in red. But assuming Charles can get access to the whiteboard by video conference, he can tell everyone he did not vote. Moreover, if he died, his relative Alice or another interested person could say there is no way he voted. Again, assuming everyone is paying attention, the fraud is caught. And someone contemplating fraud would not know if Charles or someone close to Charles will be checking to see if he voted, thereby risking an investigation into voter fraud. Now what if another corrupt official threw away Alice's vote and envelope because he knew Alice voted for candidate A? In that case, Alice would call attention to it since she was missing from both boards. Then she would show her receipt to prove she voted. Then her vote would be placed on the board as it should have in the first place. So, with this second voting system, you can check the vote totals as well as before with the same level of self-correcting transparency present in the first voting procedure. Except with this new system, you have a much higher degree of privacy. Now privacy is not completely ensured. A corrupt election worker could sneak a peek at the vote in the back room if no one is closely looking before the envelope is separated. This can happen with modern mail-in ballots as well. Additionally, if there is a challenge, it might be necessary to disclose one's vote, just as Alice had to pull out her receipt to get her vote counted. However, that is a small price to pay for an accurate count. This is a reasonable privacy versus vote security trade-off. I would argue this system is much more reasonable when it comes to protecting privacy than campaign contribution disclosures, which serve as an effective tell as to your vote. Generally, you do not give money to someone you do not intend to vote for unless you are contributing to both sides, so you can expect favors if either one candidate wins. This is a highly secure system because once again, everyone can watch. It is an open source tally. How does this differ from mail-in voting now? Well, first of all, in most jurisdictions, you cannot verify your vote. If it is flipped by a person deliberately filling out a duplicate ballot incorrectly, you will never know. If the machine does not count it or any of the other ballots correctly, you will never know unless a hand recount could be done and was called for. Remember, in many states a hand count requires the race to be rather close, and the computer or the people behind the scenes could make sure that threshold was never triggered. Additionally, there is rarely a list of everyone who voted made publicly available to everybody. So, it is not easy to look to see who might be voting that should not. If you know the person's personal details, you might be able to look up online whether they voted. If you put in a Freedom of Information request, you might get the entire list of voters. It is the closed nature of conventional vote counts that makes them inherently insecure. An open-source system carried out with conventional paper ballots should be resilient to fraud. And it is much easier to do this online since you cannot practically fit an entire population in a room. This is the simple idea behind the open-source voting proposal. In fact, we believe you can do this sort of tally much better using technologies such as digital signatures that are much more difficult to forge than paper ballots and numbers. You would essentially need to have access to a quantum computer to do so. And we will discuss in another video how to mitigate the risk from quantum computers. When you can securely document each step of the process with digital signatures, timestamps, and video recordings of voter registration, you should not even have to do a revote if there is a problem with the tally, as you would with the examples I just mentioned. The remaining videos will talk about the logistics of how to do such a secure count digitally. Just know that the end product is just as verifiable as the tally method I just showed you, no matter if quantum computers or hackers are brought into the equation. If someone attempts to cheat, it will be found out if everyone is paying attention. Indeed, with the addition of digital software, we can ensure more people are paying attention than with a manual count, because machines on your computer can also automatically alert you that there is a problem.